Hi guys, my name is Oded, and in this podcast we'll speak about software development in the field of medical device, pharmaceuticals, and healthcare with industry-leading experts. I hope you'll find this content useful. Let's start. I'm very pleased today that we have Professor Oliver Haase to help us better understand the AI side of regulation with respect to those new medical devices that use AI in them. Last time we spoke with an expert from with deep understanding from the FDA, and now we are going to the other continent. And we can't ask for a better expert to share with us the insight of those new emerging regulation. Thank you very much for participating. Can you, before we dive in, can you please tell us a bit about yourself professionally?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Odette, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, as you said, my name is Oliver Haase. I'm a computer science professor, and I founded and I'm the managing director of a company called Validate ML. And to briefly describe what we are doing, let's take a brief look at the situation that manufacturers are in. And the thing is that a manufacturer of a machine learning-based medical device product faces a high-risk situation with enormous legal responsibility and very little reliable, actionable guidance. And with our profound expertise, both in the artificial intelligence and the regulatory domain, we help manufacturers build, document, and get cleared leading-edge products. And for that, we follow a highly cooperative approach where we build together with the client a custom-tailored project plan and help them execute it in a structured, time and cost-efficient way.
Brilliant. And there are new emerging regulations. Maybe you can start to describe them in a nutshell.
Sure, I will. So for that, let's very briefly start with the intention of that AI regulation that is twofold. The first intention is to protect the safety, health, and fundamental rights of EU citizens from the potential harm of intelligent systems. And the second intention is to harmonize legislation across the EU member states. And to do that, the regulation follows a risk-based approach. Most notably, it has defined a category of a very small but harmful category of AI systems that are considered unacceptable or whose risk is considered unacceptable. And those AI systems are generally prohibited by the new AI regulation. Let's just say in this context that this part does not apply to medical devices. Secondly, it defines a category of high-risk AI systems, and this is the part that's most relevant for medical device manufacturers.
So the regulation is not specifically targeting medical device, it's targeting all AI software?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. So the regulation also in this respect is twofold. It targets both already regulated markets, such as the medical device market, as well as not yet regulated markets. And as far as the regulated markets go, or in particular the medical devices market goes, the regulation applies in under two conditions. And the first condition is that the medical product is classified as a 2A or above product. As you know, in MDR, medical device regulation terminology, that means that the product is considered medium to high risk. And the second condition under which the new AI regulation will apply is that the medical product contains an AI component that is safety critical, or the medical product itself is a standalone machine learning or AI-based software. And this second part, meaning that the AI component needs to be safety critical, that boils down, in my opinion, to the component belonging to the software safety class B or C. And what's also worth mentioning is that the regulations definition of artificial intelligence is rather broad and extensible. It does cover a lot of techniques, including statistical and rule-based approaches, just as much as deep neural networks and anything that might come and will be added to the list. The good news, on the other hand, is that the regulation follows the European Commission's new legislative framework, just like the MDR. Consequently, many requirements for high-risk AI systems are long known to medical device manufacturers. That is, the need for a quality and risk management system, the obligation to draw up comprehensive technical documentation.
Okay, but so what does, as a medical device manufacturer, and let's say I have a class B or class C, and I want to use AI to support some decision making, what does that mean in the field? What does that actually mean that, that from this new regulation, how can I use it to have better understanding of my duties?
Right. Yeah, very good question. So as I just mentioned, the requirements on AI, on high-risk AI systems under the new regulation are very similar to what medical device manufacturers already know, at least from a very high perspective. So the general mechanisms are the same. So they need a quality management system, a risk management system, and technical documentation. On the other hand, the AI regulation is much more specific about AI because it is focused on AI. The MDR does not mention AI. It's not even meant to mention AI. And at this point in time, there's very little regulatory guidance for AI-based medical device software, and that will be different with the AI regulation because it is more specific on these AI requirements. And in that respect, it fills in the current regulatory gaps and provides higher legal certainty. And by the way, it does that already today, even before it has passed the parliament, because it already contributes to the state of the art.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is we have the framework because we already are with the MDR, so all that risk management mindset and quality system mindset, that's all needed and it's there already. But when it comes to, let's say, more how to validate an AI algorithm, how to, I don't even want to say but change control or something like that, is it where the AI regulation can help us to have better guidelines? How do we prove that the algorithm does what it says and meets its intended use?
Yeah, well, yes and no. It does so at least partly. So the AI regulation contains more explicit requirements, for example, on data and data governance. It contains requirements on the training processes, on the required quality of the resulting machine learning software, and so on. So in that respect, it is more specific than the MDR and even the accompanying harmonized standards. But in many respects, it's not as specific and as actionable as you would like it as a manufacturer or as you might have had it in mind. So it's a step towards being more specific, but it's in many respects not directly applicable or not directly actionable for manufacturers.
Okay, and so as a manufacturer, is there any benefits from this regulation that you can really direct and say, okay, now with this regulation, you have that benefit that we didn't have before, and what is the price that I need to pay for that benefit? And,
right. Yeah.
And what is lacking? Also, maybe you can say what's still missing?
What's still missing?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. So, yeah, as I try to touch upon the main benefit is the increased legal certainty for manufacturers. So because it is more specific than the MDR by nature, it is even more specific than the IEC 62304 for software development for medical devices, because it has the focus on artificial intelligence. So the requirements, as I said, on data governance, on the training processes, on the labeling process, requirements on transparency towards the user, explainability, all these aspects are mentioned in the AI regulation. So the manufacturer has more certainty about what the authorities expect them to do. So that's really the benefit. Or let's, if we want to put it differently, at this point in time, manufacturers have to apply state of the art. And because there is no explicit standards describing exactly what to do. So they have to follow state of the art. And that, of course, is a very vague definition with a lot of legal uncertainty. And now this uncertainty becomes smaller with the AI regulation, because, as I said, there are these more specific requirements. So that's the benefit side of the picture. And then on the downside, I would mention two things. One is that some or many of these requirements are good to be there, but are not yet at the level of being actionable. So, for example, the AI regulation requires manufacturers to take care of biases, of data biases. However, it does not prescribe any particular techniques or approaches how manufacturers could do that. And at this point in time, that's a very unclear field, or that it's a field that's still under research. And similarly with explainability. So the AI regulation expects manufacturers to build explainable AI systems, but how exactly that's done for deep neural network, that's very unclear at this point in time. That's still a very
nobody knows. That's the whole idea. That's why we call it AI, because we can't explain the mathematical equation. We say AI. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, but then, of course, there is a big need for explainability, and the regulation manifests this need, but it does not give any hints as to the solution how this is done. But in my opinion, that's not even the task of the AI regulation. So I don't expect the regulation to fill this gap, but I would really expect the accompanying harmonized standards to do that. So what in that respect, the AI regulation is a very good next step. But then the step after that will be standardized, will be harmonized standards that will go into this level of detail and really describe what level of explainability expected, what bias detection and bias avoidance really means, and all these things that manufacturers then can take as a cookbook, as a recipe book, or as a checklist to see whether they fulfill these requirements. So that's not in the AI regulation yet, and that's the part where you asked for what's still missing. So I guess what's missing really are harmonized standards that explain or even more specifically define these requirements. And then another downside of the or potential downside of this regulation is that it requires even more technical documentation to be drawn up, and every every medical device manufacturer knows there's a lot of technical documentation already required, and the AI regulation definitely adds to that. But in my opinion, that could even be a blessing in disguise, because what this adds to is the need for a different documentation process. I think what manufacturer really should do is not spread out and replicate all the important information across tons of different documents. But what they should do is document everything in a structured way, independent of the technical documentation in the first step, and then use this information that is centralized in the sense that everything important or everything that belongs together is in one place. Everything that builds upon the other step is in one place. So that would be a structure that developers can easily follow, that the quality people in the companies, the regulatory affairs guys can really understand and follow. And then once all this information is complete, use generators to move this information into the right pieces of documentation. And if such a process is in place, then generating or drawing up the additional AI regulation documentation will be a matter of a mouse click in the best case.
Let me, for my experience, I think that dealing with this Word document mindset, I don't know how to call it otherwise, that you describe, where developers are doing their thing in one place and then having to produce. There is documents that lives in another place, and the thing that you are not always thinking. Solving that problem, it sounds even more difficult than solving a deep learning, making a deep learning algorithm. So I'm not sure. But excellent. But that's very optimistic. You say, as an industry, we are in the right direction. We are not there yet, but there's definitely a lot of benefit with the new regulation. It gives us confidence, at least from the regulator, that they are happy to see those technologies incorporated in the healthcare. That's a fair point.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a good summary. Or let me rephrase it slightly differently. I'm not as pessimistic about the new AI regulation as many other people are. So when you hear talk and discussion about the AI regulation, there's a lot talking about over-regulation and additional burdens. And of course, that's not completely wrong. I touched upon that briefly. There is additional burden in terms of technical documentation. That's true. But I think the benefit of more legal certainty and clearer requirements that might very easily outweigh the drawbacks. At least that's my hope. And in that respect, I think we are on the right track, or the regulators are on the right track. And the next step will be to come up with harmonized standards as fast as possible, and definitely faster than in the case of the MDR.
Excellent. So again, thank you very much. If the listener wants to learn more about this topic, or have some difficulties that they want to consult with you, how can people follow your publications or reach you out?
All right. Okay. So yeah, you can rather easily contact us via our website. That would be validateml.de. Or you can contact me on LinkedIn via my LinkedIn profile. So you find me under my name and the company. And if Odette even posts the links under this video, then it will be even easier to find us. But I think yeah, that should be easily doable. And I would be happy to, if you have any additional questions, just contact me, ask me. I'll always be happy to help.
Excellent. Thank you very much.